Fellow hunters, we have a lot to talk about today, and oh man, are we eating good. We'll be covering the February Capcom showcase, the second open beta, as well as the things not mentioned in the showcase that you absolutely need to be aware of, especially if you're playing on PC. This will include new monsters, returning monsters, the new biome, and features and functions in the open beta test. So sit back, relax, grab yourself a drink or a snack, and enjoy the ride. Okay, so I don't think I've been this excited since the State of Play trailer that dropped the Monster Hunter Wilds release date. After the Oil Well Basin, there was one other biome suspiciously missing. And where there's cool drinks, there must be hot drinks. Enter the Iceshard Cliffs. Here we find a new monster, Hirabami. The fact that these tall boys travel in groups isn't exactly giving me the warm and fuzzies, but I was quickly distracted by what followed. One of the scenes shows the apex monster of the Iceshard Cliffs completely dwarfing the group of them. While we can't get a full picture here, it reminds me a bit of Najarala from 4U. Furthermore, its serpent-like form shares some fairly suspicious aesthetic parallels with Wild's logo. And that right there is the first hint at where I think Capcom is going with Wilds. This will be important later, so hold on to that thought for now. If you took the time to explore the Windward Plains during the beta this past October, you may have noticed the icy cavern by the water where you can swim. Capcom isn't playing around and waiting for the DLC this time, they're giving us the Iceshard Cliffs right out the gate, unlike World where we had to wait for the Iceborne DLC.
Why is it glowing?
No clue, but I noticed it when setting up camp.
This means that the Windward Plains is confirmed to connect directly to at least two other biomes, the Scarlet Forest and now the Iceshard Cliffs. And though we don't have confirmation yet on how we access the Oil Well Basin, I'm willing to bet Capcom is going for this hub and spoke sort of overworld. Theoretically, we should be able to travel from a biome on one side of Wild's world and walk all the way to another biome on the other side of the world, with all of the regions connected one to another. I recognize that there's been a lot of debate around what specifically qualifies as an open world, but I feel that this is about as much confirmation as we're going to get until the game's release. The more I see on how Capcom and the Monster Hunter team have executed this, the more and more I anticipate a fully traversable and seamless open world. Capcom even gave us another example of just how interactable the environment is with the swinging boulders to use in combat. Whether you're playing with friends afield or hunting solo, Capcom has really leaned into the idea of pop-up tents and camp functionality. To me, this is reminiscent of Final Fantasy XV's camping system, where hunters can rest, cook, and interact with one another, especially when play sessions call for longer travel. Sure, there's fast travel to major villages, but the bread and butter of fast travel in Wilds will be where we place our pop-up camps. And on the order of these camps, we'll have the option to customize them. We're not just talking about the visual aesthetic of the tent, although that's certainly part of it, but the layout of your camp as a whole. It's like World's room customization met a hiker, and they decided to bring interior decorating to the outdoors. Going through all this effort to provide seats and a campfire for other hunters to sit around wouldn't make sense unless there was an intentional gameplay mechanic surrounding the pop-up camp experience. Furthermore, we have returning mechanics like layered armor, photo mode, and timed event quests making a return. The Monster Hunter team has even iterated on the guild card mechanic, where instead you'll have a full hunter profile to customize. In addition to this, you'll be able to customize your sacred, similarly to how you would with your hunter or palico. So much of this really keeps the social element of Monster Hunter in mind. Unfortunately, we won't get to see much of this until the full release, but even for the beta, there are some notable and positive changes. We already know that Gypsyros will be available in the second beta, which is awesome, but what I didn't expect was Arkveld, the flagship monster, added alongside it. Generally, Monster Hunter has a quest for the flagship monster in an official demo, not necessarily a beta. But it appears to me that the second beta here is serving as the demo question mark, given that it's so close to Wild's release. I think that the possibility of an official demo of the game might not arrive until after release. What's interesting to me is that they've added the training area as well as private lobby and online single player functionality to the beta. This is a big win for both solo hunters as well as those of us who are bothered by all the sticker spam in general chat. Whether using a private lobby or hunting solo in online single player, you'll still have access to the SOS hunters regardless. These will be features of the full game, but I didn't expect them to be included in the beta given that optimization and weapon tweaks would only be available in the full release. But if you're worried about optimization and aren't able to get accurate benchmarks because the beta do beta things, this is where it gets really good. It wasn't mentioned in the Capcom showcase, but true to Tokuda's word, the game has been optimized enough that the Monster Hunter team did indeed lower the Steam requirements for Wilds. We can see from the side-by-side here that there is now a lower CPU requirement for minimum spec, and a lower CPU and GPU requirement for recommended spec. While both cases still cite frame generation to hit 60 FPS, this certainly shows the team's step in the right direction for improving Wild's performance at launch. Even better, the Steam store page for Monster Hunter Wilds shadow dropped a benchmark tool to determine how your system stacks up against the final release. It runs through roughly 5 minutes of a mix of cutscenes and in-game location. And you'll have to forgive me here, but in all my excitedness, I ended up choosing the Japanese language option. So I ran through the benchmark at 4K using the Ultra preset, DLSS set to quality, and no frame generation. I'm on an RTX 3090 here, so unless I want to swap over to FSR, frame generation isn't an option available to me. What did catch my eye, however, is this option here, which wasn't present in the beta: ray tracing. Here you can see that it's off for my test, so I'm not entirely certain how it would impact performance, but with it off, I did find the performance throughout the benchmark was a measured step up from my experience with the beta. Additionally, we can see that the estimated VRAM utilization for 4K Ultra is just below the 8GB mark, which explains why we no longer see the 6700 XT with its 12GB of VRAM mentioned under recommended on the Steam store page, and instead, we see the 6600 in its place. Just bear in mind that you'll have about 10 to 15 minutes of shader compilation before you can run the benchmark. And lastly, we have two returning monsters to discuss, which have some pretty wide-reaching implications for Wild's narrative. This will be equal parts spoiler territory and my own speculation, so take this for what it's worth, put on your tinfoil hat, and let this be your first and last spoiler warning if you want to click off the video. Okay, is everyone still here? No? Somehow that totally tracks. Anyway, returning to Wild's Iceshard Cliffs region are two familiar monsters to both 4th and 5th Fleet veterans. First, we have Nerscylla, and I am loving the arachnid representation this gen. I can also see why Capcom chose to put an arachnophobia mode in the game, but what really spun my head was the monster they unveiled next. Gormagala. Any fivers who played Rise will remember the frenzy virus mechanic that comes hand in hand with fighting a Magala, but it goes deeper than that. The frenzy virus served as a narrative device in 4 and 4U, creating infected variants across a wide number of monsters, and here we swing back to my comment from earlier. We're seeing quite a few parallels between Wilds and 4U, and that's something I called attention to in a prior video. To emphasize this point further, many of you called attention to Fabius? Fabio. Fabulous. In one of the earlier trailers, he certainly drew some similarities to a prior character in the Monster Hunter franchise, and as of today, we now have official confirmation of Fabius' identity as the Ace Lancer. Another character has also been strongly associated to 4U, where many hunters compared Gemma to Little Miss Forge. This just might be more than a cool cameo, seeing one of our favorite blacksmiths all grown up. Tokuda spoke to the design philosophy of the oil well basin in one of his interviews with IGN. He remarked on how heavily they leaned into verticality for the biome and our ability to navigate it. If my assumption about the world map is right, where we'll be able to travel on foot from one side of the world to the other, and we already have a subterranean biome that goes deep beneath the surface, it wouldn't be too far a stretch to see ourselves visiting our old friends, the Trovarians, once more, narrowing the gap and closing the loop between the themes of Monster Hunter 4 and Monster Hunter Wilds. The closer we get, the more excited I become, and even just a few short weeks away, the anticipation is all that much greater. But you tell me, do you think that this all but confirms Gemma is Little Miss Forge? Are you going to try out the Wilds benchmark? What do you think of the lowered specs on the Steam page? And will the Frenzy virus be back with a vengeance, hinting at a possible return of Shigaru Magala as well? I'm Jade, and I've been covering Monster Hunter Wilds since its announced at TGA 2023. If you liked the video, please drop a like and a subscription if you haven't already. On screen is a playlist of all of the Monster Hunter videos to date, as well as a recommended video handpicked for you. As always, my friends, may the Sapphire Star guide your way. I will see you in the comments below.